Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the DFO DFS show for Tuesday, March 30th. Hope everyone had a good Tuesday and are ready to win some money in DFS. Lots of viewers in here right now, so I'm assuming some of you are new. Welcome to the show if you are. If you are watching on YouTube, please smash that like button as we go. If you're enjoying yourself, it means a lot. And yeah, anything you do see today on the Google Sheets can be available by joining DFO Premium for as little as $9.99 for a week. Obviously, you can get a little bit of that information here for free on the show every day. But if you are somebody that likes to build your lineups throughout the day, you get that information much earlier in the day. And it makes it a little bit easier. You got it at your fingertips to build your lineup. So yeah, that's pretty much it. According to dailyfaceoff.com, we probably only have a 6-game slate today, but there is actually 7 games. I'm having a difficult time getting one of the games to show up. So my apologies there. Hopefully we get it up soon. Montreal and Edmonton is missing. We've been having a difficult time with all the postponements this year. One of our third-party providers is a little bit slow. So sorry about that, but there are 7 games tonight. I'm just curious. I'm new. What days do you do this show? I do this show every day for sure, Monday through Thursday. And then I try to do it on Friday. Usually Friday, it is a little bit earlier in the day, usually closer to 3:30 if I do it on a Friday, but I can't always do it on Friday because I record a podcast Friday. So, but definitely Monday through Thursday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern. Willie says your feed is cutting in and out. Well, I'm showing that I've got a strong connection right now. So hopefully that's not the case. If anybody else is having that issue, please let me know. But looks good to me right now. So I'm just going to continue to chug along here. But yeah, so the first game is actually going to be Montreal and Edmonton. Carey Price confirmed for the Canadiens. Mikko Koskinen confirmed on a back-to-back for the Edmonton Oilers. Then the Panthers will host the Detroit Red Wings. The Panthers will be most likely without Alexander Barkov again. And then obviously without Aaron Ekblad, who's out for the rest of the season. Totally brutal news. Super unfortunate. He was having a terrific season. And he's a local boy from where I'm at. It's actually from my hometown. So really sad to see him go down. But they will continue to chug along. They host the Red Wings, who I would have imagined go to Calvin Pickard. He's won 2 in a row. Why not, right? But again, unconfirmed there. Curtis McElhinney was the first goalie off the ice this morning for the Lightning. Andrei Vasilevsky stayed on for extra work. So it looks like McElhinney for the Lightning. Elvis Merzlikins starts for the Columbus Blue Jackets. New York will host the Capitals again. Igor Shesterkin confirmed for New York. Vitek Vanacek expected to get the start for the Capitals. The Bruins will go back to Yaroslav Halak as they host the New Jersey Devils, who will most likely use Mackenzie Blackwood, but again, unconfirmed. Most likely won't get notice of that starter until warmups at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. At 7:30, we've got the Chicago Blackhawks and the Carolina Hurricanes. It will be Kevin Lankinen against Alex Nedeljkovic. Dylan Strome back in for the Blackhawks. And Vincent Trocheck, a game-time decision for the Hurricanes. So a couple forwards returning to the lineup for both teams in that one. And then the nightcap, not really a nightcap, but 8 p.m. Eastern start. We've got the Nashville Predators. UC Saros is available tonight, they said. So he could start potentially. He's obviously been a rock for them. I don't know. They've got 2 games here in the next 3 days against the Stars. 2 huge games too. So maybe they go to Saros in both of them because he's been playing so well. But Rene showed up pretty well the other night in Saros' absence. So maybe they split the 2 games and give Saros an extra night off. But to be honest with you, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Saros. I'd probably peg this one at about 50-50. And with the Predators, you never get anything early. So 7:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll get that confirmation for you. In warmups, Anton Khudobin starts for the Stars. Let's go Blue. Yeah, huge game tonight for Michigan. So yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about basketball, but huge game. Hopefully they can get to the Final Four. That would be outstanding. Peter B says no issues. Okay, good. Wally, maybe it's just the Twitter feed. Maybe if you go to YouTube, it's working a little bit better because all these comments are coming in from YouTube. So maybe YouTube's a little bit clearer. And Graham says, what podcast do you do? I do the Daily Faceoff podcast, the DFO podcast. It's a season-long podcast. So if you play season-long, we cover every single Friday, all your waiver wire pickups, all the information that you need, trades, all that stuff. So yeah, if you play season-long, tune into the DFO podcast. But all right, let's get into tonight's slate. So we will start with this Montreal Edmonton game, which is not showing up. A little bit of a recap from last night's show. Hopefully you guys all made some cash. I think it was pretty much as perfect of a night as the DFO DFS show can possibly have. We hit on pretty much everything last night, which was awesome. The only line that really let us down was Toronto 2, which is unsurprising because I played them. They just seem to not show up when I play them and always tear it up when I don't. But everybody else hit. Winnipeg 2 obviously smashed for us. Unfortunately, it was more like a combination of Winnipeg 1 and 2 because they decided to put Connor and Ehlers up with Scheifele, but it is what it is. But anyways, enough about last night. Let's take a look at tonight. Dustin crushed last night. Good to hear. That's why you're back. I like it. But all right, Edmonton 1 looks like the obvious target here in this game. Montreal 1, again, if you're new to the show, Montreal 1's always going to grade out pretty well because this model is based on their 5v5 offensive production. And nobody really puts up offensive numbers quite like Montreal 1, at least from an underlying perspective. Their underlying numbers are always outstanding, but they kind of lack that really high-end talent to convert on many of those chances. So they're always going to grade out well, but you always got to take their 5v5 score with a grain of salt because they're probably not quite as good as they would show up in this. But again, they can obviously go off on any given night because they are generating chances at a higher clip than most people. So they look solid. Montreal 2 right behind them. Edmonton 2 below average, and then the other both third lines do not look very good. So this is a bit of an interesting matchup because you've got Montreal coming off of a lengthy absence after COVID-19. They look relatively healthy. They are still missing Tyler Toffoli, but they get Jesperi Kotkaniemi back from the COVID-19 reserve list. They're still missing Yoel Armia. And then you got the Oilers coming in on a back-to-back. So very well rested against a back-to-back, and it was obviously a really, really tough game for the Oilers last night, right? Like a huge game against the Leafs. They won it in overtime, but maybe a bit of a trap game here for the Oilers. But if there's any line that you can't count out in any game, it is Draisaitl and McDavid. So let's get into the matchups here. So pretty simple in terms of matchups in this game. Basically top 6 against top 6, bottom 6 against bottom 6. Very easy for us to break down, which is what we like. As I mentioned, Montreal 1 outstanding offensive numbers, but they go up against, obviously a McDavid line. They're going to see a lot of McDavid tonight. I'd be a little bit surprised if it's not a little bit more in favor of Montreal 1 than Montreal 2 tonight. Because McDavid and Draisaitl are together, but you still expect Nick Suzuki to see plenty of McDavid as well. Both of these lines obviously are going to have their struggles against McDavid's line, and then they should be able to have their way with the Nugent-Hopkins line. The McDavid line hasn't quite been that terrific with Jesse Puljujarvi defensively, but they obviously are so good offensively that it's tough to kind of even get the puck off of them sometimes. So I think Montreal 2 is probably my preferred option as opposed to Montreal 1. I just don't really play Montreal 1 very often. Montreal 2, you get a pretty nice price on them too. I mean, Drouin is dirt cheap at $3,200, but just $4,600 for Suzuki and $4,900 for Anderson. So they look really, really solid for Montreal tonight. I don't have this game up there. I think that there's got to be some interest in Montreal just with the rest that they've had. They were interviewing them yesterday and they were saying how they basically were just all playing Call of Duty and chilling. So they're well rested, and maybe that little break is what they needed to kind of to win this game. So in terms of the power plays, you've got Suzuki and Anderson and Drouin all in the top unit. They kind of have a 1A, 1B situation going, but Anderson, Drouin, Suzuki all play together on the power play, which definitely increases their upside. So if you want to play them, pairing them with Shea Weber would probably make the most sense. Edmonton 1, obviously they are outstanding, and they are going to go up against two lines that are pretty good defensively. Obviously Montreal 1 solid defensively, Montreal 2 pretty good too. So in the grand scheme of things, not the greatest matchup for Edmonton 1, obviously, but on a night with not as many huge options, it's going to be difficult to fade them. They're going to be very high owned, but Montreal does pose some problems for them. Obviously, they're a pretty good defensive team. They've got two really skilled two-way centers in Phil Deneau and Nick Suzuki. So, this isn't a game where, it's not unthinkable that they don't light it up, and fading them might be an okay play tonight. But if you're building multiple lineups, I think, you probably are going to want a little bit of Edmonton 1. This does look like a good opportunity. And really where a lot of their value is going to come most likely is on the power play. The number one power play advantage by a mile on tonight's slate. The Oilers do draw quite a few penalties. The Montreal Canadiens are one of the most undisciplined teams in hockey. The Oilers, one of the best power plays in the league. Montreal with one of the worst penalty kills. So even if Edmonton 1 struggles a little bit at 5v5 on the power play, they're clinical. And then the good news is their top dogs stay out there for literally like the entire power play, right? So you don't have to worry about Kyle Turris coming in and stealing a power play goal. It's going to be McDavid or Draisaitl, most likely, Barry, whatever, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So their big dogs are going to get the production done. So Edmonton 1, even if they're going to struggle maybe a little bit at 5v5 on the power play, they should absolutely smash tonight. So you got to have a little bit of interest in them, no doubt about it. Okay, second game. We've got the Red Wings and the Panthers. So as I mentioned, the Panthers are pretty banged up. Let's pull up their line combinations because they are a little bit different today. So Huberdeau is still going to be with Wenberg and Brett Connolly on the other wing with Patrick Hornquist still sidelined. And then Noel Acciari moves up between Verhaeghe and Duclair to replace Alexander Barkov. Acciari's done okay in that spot before, but obviously he's no Alexander Barkov. And then the bottom six is what it is. Mackenzie Weegar will be with Gustav Forsling with Ekblad out. Obviously, I love Forsling, but he's not Aaron Ekblad. So then here's how the new power play units are going to look. Wenberg with Huberdeau, Connolly, and Tippett, and then Keith Yandel at the point. So obviously a really nice promotion for Owen Tippett. I think that he makes for a pretty interesting punt. If you want to one-off a Panther tonight, if you don't feel like stacking the Panthers, I think that Tippett's a pretty interesting one-off play. Overall, it looks like a pretty good matchup. Obviously, Calvin Pickard had two pretty nice games. That was against really struggling Blue Jackets team, so maybe the Panthers can still get it done here. But the Red Wings have been playing pretty good hockey. I think they're above 500 in March, so maybe this is going to be a tough game. I don't know. I kind of like Detroit tonight. Florida 2 grades out as the best line in this game. Their numbers with the Acciari between Verhaeghe and Duclair have actually been pretty solid, but they're just so banged up. I don't know. It's just a weird game. So let's break it down, from the matchups first. So it's basically going to be, we'll start with the Huberdeau line. They're going to see Red Wings 1 and Red Wings 3 for the majority of the time. Florida 2, which is the Acciari Duclair line. They're going to see a lot of Detroit 4 tonight, which is okay. And then the third lines will go kind of head to head. So, Florida 1, like I've said before, I rarely played the Huberdeau line when Barkov was healthy. It's probably going to continue now. Obviously, they're probably going to see a little bit more ice time now, but they still just aren't getting anything done at 5v5. So, and their power play, without a doubt, is going to take a hit without Barkov and Ekblad. So it's even becomes more difficult to trust them for power play production. No Hornquist, no Barkov, no Ekblad. I mean, that's a lot. That's 60% of your top power play unit not there. So it becomes a little bit more harder to bank on that production. Florida 3, obviously pretty solid numbers across the board. They give up a lot defensively. They play a very up-tempo style, but generating 30 scoring chances for 14 high danger is going to be pretty good. Maybe enough to get on the board against Cal Pickard. So as I mentioned, they're going to see a lot of, basically everybody except for Detroit 3. And Detroit 3 is, okay, they're all below average. The Red Wings just aren't that good defensively the way things are built right now. So a pretty good matchup. You have to consider it a pretty good matchup for Florida too. And I do like them. My only issue is that Verhaeghe, his price is so inflated because of what he's done in the past. 5,800. It's really difficult for me to play Verhaeghe at 5,800 with Acciari down the middle, and you're not even getting a big discount on Acciari either at 4,800. So it's going to be very difficult for me to play the Panthers tonight. I just don't love it. It's brutal. Nick says, love the content, buddy. Appreciate it. What's your strategy for head-to-head? I do not play head-to-head, so it's kind of rough. I would imagine, when I've tried to play it, you try to build more of a cash lineup, right? You don't need to have the elite upside, so stacking big-time stacks is obviously not really the best play. You're building more of a cash lineup. So guys with good shot volume, and just trying to basically play the chalkiest plays of the night. You want to play your McDavids, and then find some value in between. Izzy says hard to like the Panthers for several reasons. Yeah, it is. I think one reason to like them is maybe Calvin Pickard. I think he's got like a 905 save percentage in his career, so he's not very good, but they just don't have a lot going for them. They're too banged up. It's going to be difficult. The other reason to like them, though, is they're probably not going to be very high owned. So in a matchup against the Red Wings, but the Red Wings really haven't been giving up all that much. So, all right, let's focus on the Red Wings now. So their top line is going to see about pretty much an even split against everybody tonight. The Panthers, obviously were pretty good defensively over the course of the season with this thinned out lineup. They're not looking nearly as formidable. So I do like Detroit. I think they're very interesting. Robbie Fabry's been on a heater. You get Philip Zadina at just 3,500. Dylan Larkin is 5,500. They're very reasonably priced. Larkin's been shooting a ton lately, which you love to see. So I do like Detroit 1 quite a bit tonight. You do get Larkin, Zadina, and Hronek on the top power play unit together. Unfortunately, Fabry on the second unit. But I also have a little bit of interest in Detroit too. Obviously, they don't grade out very well, but they're extremely cheap. Just 3,300 for Nemestikov, 4,000 for Anthony Mantha. So they're extremely cheap. Their numbers together haven't been very good, but very comparable to Detroit 1. So, I think that if you want to play Detroit tonight, maybe Detroit 2 is the way to do it because you can just kind of use them as your punt play and hope it works. Because, Mant at 4,000, he can have a big game at any moment. So I think, obviously it's going to be a little bit more difficult to stomach paying up a little bit more for Detroit 1 if you're not that interested in them. But Detroit 2 makes a little bit more sense because you get them at so cheap. Yandle is 4,100. Achari 3,700. I'm assuming that's on FanDuel. Get back to me and I'll let you know. Anybody know why Habs Sens game was changed to Habs Oilers tonight? Yeah, it's just because the Oilers were supposed to play there last week, and then they were already in Toronto, right? So instead of them going all the way back to Edmonton and then coming all the way back out east to make this game up later, they kind of just shuffled the schedule around while Edmonton is still kind of in the area. So, a lot of juggling going on by the NHL so far this year, but they've done a pretty decent job. But that is why. That is. Going back to Keith Yandle for a minute here. Yandle is a little bit interesting, obviously, as the lone, quarterback on the top power play. Maybe you'd expect a bump in usage. His last couple games, only 14 minutes and 9 minutes. That's not great, but you'd expect that to go up. I have a little bit more interest in a guy like Gustav Forsling going to the top pair as well. He should see a ton of minutes. After Ekblad left the other night, he played 25 minutes, played 22 minutes the game before. So Forsling looks pretty interesting at 3,800 as well. Unfortunately, probably not going to get as much power play usage with Nunavara expected to be in. But he looks fine with the increased minutes. But that's enough about the Red Wings and in Florida because it really doesn't look like that appealing of a game. Tampa and Columbus. Even though McElhinney gets a start, I'm not playing Columbus for as long as I live. They couldn't score against Calvin Pickard. They're not going to score against Curtis McElhinney, most likely. They're an absolute dumpster fire right now offensively. If we look here at their numbers, nothing really jumps off the page at us. The third line looks okay, but I'm not playing Boone Jenner, Nick Foligno, and Alexander Texier. The top line is meh, but they just, Line A is just not getting shots. They're just a bizarre team right now. So, until they heat up, I'm just not playing them. So I'm not really going to break that game down too much, or at least that team. For the Lightning, basically the first line against the second line against the third line against the fourth line. So pretty easy matchup. So we'll start with the first line, Tampa 1, the best offensive line for the Lightning. We'll pull up their line combinations here so you can see who that is. It is Andre Palat. It is Braden Point. It is Tyler Johnson. Stamkos back on the second line with Cirelli and Killorn. They're going to see a lot of Columbus 2, not very good defensively. So good matchup for Tampa 1, no doubt about it. Tampa Bay 2 is going to go up against Columbus 1, not very good defensively. Both those lines are almost the exact same defensively. The Columbus 2 has a slightly lower expected goals for percentage and a much lower Corsi for percentage. So it looks like Tampa 1 has the upper hand a little bit over Tampa 2 in terms of the matchup, also producing a little bit better offensively. So if you're going to play Tampa, I think Tampa 1 is probably your best play. Tampa 2 looks okay, but Point and Palat 6,100, 6,200 look pretty solid. And then Tyler Johnson looks like a nice value play at 3,300. But if you kind of want to maybe go with a power play stack approach, I think that's okay too, because Stamkos is down to 6,700, super cheap. They obviously haven't been playing as great as of late. The power play production isn't very, or their power play advantage isn't very large tonight because the Blue Jackets are very disciplined, but the Lightning best power play on the entire slate. Unfortunately, the Blue Jackets do have a pretty good penalty kill, so it's a little bit of a risky option, but I think it'll be relatively low owned to go with a power play approach and play all their big dogs as opposed to just stacking one line. So in big GPPs, I think that's an okay play. It's just, it's a pretty good price, right? You got 6,200 for Point, 6,100 for Palat, 6,700 for Stamkos, 4,300 for Killorn. So pretty reasonable power play stack to get one of the best power plays in the league. Even though it's not the best matchup, it's very cheap for what they offer. I gotta get a glass of water here. I'm dying. Okay, so Alvin says, which one would you rather have on FanDuel? Yandle at 4,100 or Achari at 3,700? Probably Achari. He just seems to offer a little bit more of a stable floor. He blocks a ton of shots. He sees lots of time on the penalty kill. So, and he's not afraid to shoot. So I think I like Achari. I think he's a little bit of a safer option. I think he's probably got a little bit of a higher floor too, just being a forward. I see that sucks. I was excited for Habs Sens. Yeah, I mean, they'll make it up soon. Tippett at 3,200 or Connolly at 3,000, which I prefer Tippett. I think Tippett's just a much better hockey player than Brett Connolly, and Brett Connolly's probably not locked into that role either. Obviously, both are on the top power play unit, but I like Tippett. He's been heating up a little bit. Still very cheap as well. All right, Washington and New York. Now, this game is also extremely interesting. They played the other night. It was an absolute barn burner. I think I didn't get to watch a ton of hockey on Sunday, but if I remember while I was kind of watching it, I think Washington went up like 5-2 or something like that, and New York stormed back, made it 5-4. The weird thing about this game, none of these lines really grade out that well, and it's a little weird because like they just played a 5-4 game, so it's hard to see, like, I don't know. I want to fade this game, but I have a bit of an uneasy feeling about it. Based on the matchups, it's going to be basically New York 1 against Washington 1, New York 2 against Washington 2. So how that looks is, obviously New York 1, their numbers are still lagging behind. Zibanejad was hot. He's incredible against the Flyers. Caps just fold on the floor. Yeah, I remember seeing like the Corsi graph, and it was just it was terrible. New York 1, they're starting to show some signs of life, but still not very good overall. What did I say the matchup was? 1 against 1? Okay. So they actually have the better matchup against the Ovechkin line. The Ovechkin line has struggled a little bit when TJ Oshie's on the wing, which is surprising. They've been better with other guys. But I don't know. It's tough because New York 1's got the better matchup, but they're the lesser of the two lines in New York. And New York 2 crushed on Sunday. They were the much better line in that game. They were the best line in that game by far. So I have a lean towards New York 2. I always have, and that maybe it's just my bias coming out, but they crushed on Sunday, and I'm hoping that they can do it again. But they do have the tougher matchup. So if you want to go by the numbers, New York 1 seems to have the much better matchup. So you've got Zibanejad at 7,600, Kreider at 5,900, Buchnevich at 6,300. They're very expensive. New York 2, not quite as expensive. Strome up to 6,000. I don't love that. Panarin 7,700, pretty expensive, and Kako 3,000. So they're very pricey, and I think that this could be a popular game. I think it will be a popular game because it was 5-4 on Sunday. But I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit low scoring. I could get burned by that, no doubt about it. But you'd think that both teams might want to buckle it down after that 5-4 game. And we've seen that quite a bit on these back-to-backs, right? Or these like 2-game sets where it's super high scoring in the first game, lower scoring in the second game. So maybe that happens. Maybe I'm onto something. And it just, the numbers kind of speak to that happening. But obviously Ovechkin has been red hot. Kuznetsov's finally getting things going. Their matchup looks pretty solid going up against New York 1. Like, yeah, New York 1's matchup's good, but, pretty good matchup the other side for Washington 1 too. So, if it does turn into a track meet, that's definitely a possibility, but it just doesn't look like both these teams aren't very good at 5v5. They just really aren't. Tell me I'm wrong, but the numbers tell me that they are not great at 5v5. Rangers are 3-2 versus Caps. That's a team that has had their number. Yeah, and it's just this game is just weird to me. In terms of the power play, New York has a slightly positive advantage. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they draw more penalties than pretty much anybody in the NHL. Actually, I think it is the highest rate in the league. Their power play is okay, slightly above average. Meanwhile, the Capitals are shockingly slightly below average on this slate. Both teams bolster an above average penalty kill, but nothing that scares you. So, if you, before you watch this show, and you had maybe your heart set on playing New York, or you had your heart set on playing Washington, or you had your heart set on playing a game stack, then I honestly maybe just still go with it. I just don't know if I love this game in particular, but I don't want to steer you away from it and have it be another 5-4 game if that's kind of what you planned on doing originally. But it just doesn't look like a super high scoring game. The other thing that I think is kind of scaring me off is that Igor Shesterkin grades out as the number 1 goalie on the entire slate at 7,700. So I kind of want to play him. And then that makes me not want to play Washington, obviously. But it's going to be hard to play him too, like with the fact that, Ovechkin's been so good lately. But Shesterkin's looked outstanding. So he grades out as the number 1 goalie. That makes me a little bit nervous. Vanacek a little bit lower. But yeah, it's just a weird game. I don't really know. I don't really know how to take it. So I'm going to let you guys make your decision on that. To me, it doesn't look that good. All these lines, like realistically, in the grand scheme of things, I'll show you at the end, don't grade out good. I mean, only one is slightly above average, and only slightly. So yeah, they're just not very good at 5-5. The one thing that could change is, so Lars Eller is a game time decision. He's expected to play. I would imagine if Lars Eller plays, that Verona goes back up with Backstrom and Sheary drops back down. Maybe Sheary comes out completely because Sprong's been playing well. Maybe Panic comes out completely. I think this could change here. If Verona goes up, I do like Washington 2 a little bit more. But the way that things are configured right now, too, it just doesn't look all that great. Capitals power play has not been very good. They're not very good at 5v5. That's just kind of a recipe for a team that's struggling. All right, Boston and the Devils. So Boston won. Will get Brad Marchand back. He had a false positive COVID-19 test back in the lineup tonight. 24,600 to full stack them. They look really, really good. Boston 2 grades out very nicely as well. New Jersey 2, the only line that grades out slightly above average for the Devils tonight. Let's take a look at the matchups. So Boston 1 will see pretty much everybody except for New Jersey 2. Boston 2 will be in a bit of a hard match situation with New Jersey 1, and then Boston 3 will go basically head-to-head with the Jack Hughes line. So how that shakes out. So obviously Boston 1, very, very good. Outstanding 29 scoring chances, 4 per 60, 10 high danger. They've been solid all season long. 64.6 Corsi 4 percentage, 58.8 expected goals 4 percentage. I had those percentages today. Hope you guys like that. I do. So yeah, who did I say? Basically everybody except for New Jersey 2. And New Jersey 2 is, basically the Devils' best defensive line. So very good matchup for Boston 1. They're going to be able to absolutely crush the Zajac and the Zacha lines, you would imagine. As for Boston 2, they're going to see the top line for the most part, which is the Zajac line. They should crush them as well. So I do have quite a bit of interest. If you're not playing Boston 1, I do have quite a bit of interest in Boston 2. They look very solid tonight as well. So you've got Nick Ritchie back on top power play unit at 4,000. David Krejci just 4,100. Craig Smith and his shot volume at 3,400. So Smith's always had a pretty disappointing season in Boston so far this year, but he's been pretty reliable in terms of the shot volume. And, as he has been his entire career. He does have 2 goals in his last 4 games, so maybe things are starting to look up. He's been getting a little bit more usage on that second line, especially with DeBrusk out. So, if you don't want to pay up for Boston 1, maybe you want to play Edmonton or another one of these high-priced lines, I think Boston 2 presents a ton of value tonight and a very good matchup with this Travis Zajac line. So that's really, really nice stuff for them. Basically, the only line I wouldn't play from Boston is Boston 3. Going head-to-head with Jack Hughes line is going to be a little bit more difficult. But that brings me right into my next point. The Hughes line's got very good offensive numbers. 30 scoring chances for, 11 high danger. They grade out just slightly behind Boston 1 in terms of overall offensive production, but they don't have a very good matchup tonight. So I'm probably going to steer clear of New Jersey altogether tonight. Just not a very good matchup for them. Boston 1 and Boston 2 look really, really good, depending on what you're doing with your lineup build is going to determine which one of those 2 that you play. Boston, slightly below average on the power play, but the Devils' penalty kill is a disaster, so I wouldn't read too much into that. The Bruins' penalty power play has been slightly below average. The Devils are pretty disciplined. The Bruins don't draw a ton of penalties, so there might not be a ton of chances. But when they get the opportunities, they, even if the power play is struggling a little bit, they're going up against a horrid penalty kill. So the Bruins just look solid across the board. Pasta or Ovi and Cash, I would go Pasta for sure. Just a much better matchup altogether. So I would go Pasta over Ovechkin. But if you fit both of them, they both look solid in Cash. But Pasta would be my play. All right, so now we've got the Blackhawks and the Hurricanes. We are at 30 minutes, so I got to pick up the pace here. Where are we at? Chicago 1. Okay, so I'm a little concerned about this game because I don't really know what the lines are going to look like. Kirby Dach started last game with Kane, but then DeBrincat wasn't on that line, and then halfway through the game, it was Suter, Kane, DeBrincat. So I don't know what these lines are going to look like. If it's DeBrincat, Dach, Kane, sign me up. Unbelievable. These are what the lines looked like the last time Dylan Strome and Dach played in the lineup together, which was on the 27th. So that's kind of what I'm basing it off of, but it could be completely different come warm-up. We didn't get anything during the morning skate. So that's that for what we've got for now. Regardless of how it shakes out, I love Kirby Dach as a punt play, as a one-off, as whatever. He's a terrific value option tonight. He's only 2,700. His first 2 games back after missing like what was it, 5 months, 4 months with a broken wrist. He played 20 minutes and 21 minutes. So the production's obviously not been there. Only one shot on goal in each of them. But he's playing like crazy, and you have to imagine he is going to see some playing time with Patrick Kane at some point in the game. He is on the top power play unit as well. So he looks terrific as a one-off. If you want to mini him with Strome, we will get into the matchups here in a second, but Strome's minimum price too. So like it doesn't get much cheaper, right? They're basically both minimum price, both highly skilled players. So if they're together, I think that's fine. But definitely keep an eye out on their lines and warmups. I will tweet them out. But Chicago won. Grades are the best. I don't know if I mentioned Trocheck game time decision. Looks like he's back for the Hurricanes, but they will keep him on, or they will keep Niederreiter and Netchess with Aho as opposed to putting him back with Trocheck. A little bit surprising there. Andrei Svechnikov expected to play with Trocheck, Jesper Fast on the other side, and then just the shutdown third line. Blackwood's won 3 of 4 against the Bruins. Yeah, I mean that's fine. Palmieri has scored against the Bees last 2 games. Sure. I don't go off that past stuff that much, to be honest with you. If you want to read into it, go for it. Those are a little bit noisy to me, but yeah. I mean, New Jersey 2 looks okay. They do look fine if you want to play Palmieri, but I'm not playing Blackwood. So, all right. The matchups in this game is basically Chicago 1 against the middle 6 of the Hurricanes. Chicago 2 will be hard matched against the Aho line. So that leaves the third line to go against the middle 6 of the Hurricanes. And then the fourth line will basically go head to head. So what does that mean exactly? So Chicago 1, not very good. Offensively overall on the season, they've been okay, slightly above average. Obviously, I haven't really been on them all year. But Carolina 2 and 3, they look okay defensively, slightly below average, not great, not terrible. So it's a decent matchup for Chicago 1. I would be much more inclined to play them if Doc's on the top line as opposed to Suter, especially with Doc being only 3,000. Chicago 2, obviously terrific offensive numbers, but they will have their hands full with the Aho line, so I probably won't go there tonight. They were much more attractive when Hagel was on that top power play unit at like $2,800. I like them a little bit better then, not so much now. Chicago 3, again, don't know if that's what they're going to look like, but this looks like one of their better offensive lines if that's the route that they go. And the same matchup as Chicago 1, pretty good against the middle 6 of the Hurricanes. So they look solid for sure. Both Chicago 1 and Chicago 3 look pretty good to me. At least Chicago 3 from a value standpoint. As for the Hurricanes, this top line with Aho, Netchess, Niederreiter's been solid, not great. The second line, not anywhere near as good with Trocheck as he was with Netchess and Niederreiter, so maybe something that they'll switch up. But Carolina 2 is going to be in the best spot here because they're going to see Chicago 1 and Chicago 3. As opposed to the Aho line going up head-to-head with this really good second line of the Blackhawks. So if you're going to play Carolina 2 looks like the play. The issue for me, Trocheck is probably way too expensive at $6,700 just coming back from an injury. He didn't miss a ton of time, but Svechnikov is beautifully priced at $5,600. So maybe you want to go with them as a mini. They both play together on the top power play unit, so you got to like that a little bit. Them as a mini is probably my preferred option in this entire game, but I do have a little bit interest on the Blackhawks side as well, as long as they can solve Alex Nedeljkovic. But Svechnikov looks like an excellent cash game option. Looks like a terrific one-off play. If you want to pair him with Trocheck, I think that's fine. I don't normally play fast. He's obviously had a couple games here and there, but overall, not a very reliable source. But Trocheck is a game time decision. So he is, it looks like he's going to play. He practiced yesterday. He was on the ice for the morning skate as well. The number from the past through right or wrong. So the point is valid, or is the sample size the issue? Not sure what that means. That was weirdly worded. So if you want to make it more clear, I'll help answer that. Carolina 2 looks like the best play, but Chicago 1, Chicago 3. I just love Kirby Dach as the player. I love Kirby Dach. His upside at 2,700 on the top power play unit. And if he moves up to that top line, obviously he's going to be terrific. Overall, in the power play, Chicago has a pretty good power play, obviously. The Carolina Hurricanes have a good power play. The Blackhawks penalty kill is not very good. So the Hurricanes have a pretty positive power play advantage tonight. But the Blackhawks should get plenty of chances. The Hurricanes have not been very disciplined throughout the course of the season. All right, final game. Looks like Phil Forsberg is still out for the Nashville Predators, which will leave them with Tolvanen, Arvidsson, and Johansson on the top line. Luckily, they got Kunin back right as Forsberg went down. But overall, this lineup's pretty thin. But they've been red hot. But they've been relying on outstanding goaltending to get the job done more than good offense. So yeah, Dallas 1 grades out the best in this game by a pretty significant margin. Dallas 2 looks okay. All of Nashville looks pretty mediocre at best. So let's start on the Dallas side. Dallas 1 looks the best. They're basically going to play 75% of their ice time against the top 6 of the Predators. Top 6 of the Predators, is by far their most exploitable lines, defensively below average across the board. Meanwhile, Dallas 1 has been outstanding as of late. The issue with Dallas 1, the price is obviously starting to reflect that. Robertson up to 5,100, Ince 5,300, Pavelski 6,800. So, regardless, pretty good matchup. I really like Dallas 1. I've been playing them quite a bit lately, especially Hintz and Robertson, formerly known as Dallas 2. Now with Pavelski, they're even better. So I really, really like them. That's a nice matchup for them against, pretty mediocre top 6 for the Predators. Dallas 2, again, looks pretty solid as well. They basically have the same matchup. They'll see a little bit more of Nashville 3, which is, a little bit better defensively than the top 6. So, if I was going to play Dallas, I would just stick with that top line. No need to get cute and go to the second line with Jamie Benn, Dickinson, and Gurionov. I think Gurionov's fine. At 4,100, he's way too cheap for what his talent level is. I liked it a little bit better when he was playing with Hintz and Robertson. But his shot volume is super consistent. The problem is he's not on the top power play unit. I don't know why you wouldn't use him on the top power play unit, but they don't. So I just have a little bit more interest in Dallas 1 than Dallas 2. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to fade the really hot line and go to the not so hot line. So, and then from a Nashville perspective, Dallas is just too good defensively. And Nashville's not that great offensively, so it just makes me not want to play them. Dallas is just super, super good. They lock everything down. They're super good defensively, I should say. And I think Dallas is starting to figure it out. I think Dallas is starting to get it going a little bit here and looking a little bit more like the team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals a year ago, right? So they concern me a little bit, the Predators tonight. So I don't really have a whole lot of interest there. Dallas, good. Davis has smashed the like button, guys. Yes, please do. Rupe is in. We're not seeing a game time decision tag next to his name. Yes. The numbers on the sheets are from the past, though, right or wrong, so the point is valid, or is the sample size the issue, referring to Blackwood doing well versus Boston? Yeah, I mean, it's just like, obviously goalies are weird, right? Like, they're voodoo. So it's like him doing solid against them in a couple games. It's like, maybe it's an outlier. Maybe it's just he's comfortable in that building or whatever it is. But it's hard to really put a whole lot of stock into that because, by all things considered, based on the numbers, it looks like they're going to get dominated. So it's tough to trust a goalie that's going to be, under siege all night. Obviously, it means he could see a lot of shots and steal one if you want to play the narrative game, and that's fine. If you want to take a look at the shot volume, he's expected to see the 3rd most shots on the entire slate. But if you want to take a look at the expected goals for, right about in the middle of the pack. So he looks okay, but what is he priced at? 7,400. Yeah, like, it's hard for me to get too excited about Blackwood at 7,400 when you can get Khudobin at 7,700, when you can get Shesterkin at 7,700. So I just don't love Blackwood tonight. And then Dallas, slightly positive or slightly below average on the power play. My favorite goalie tonight would be probably Yaroslav Halak at 8,100. He would be my favorite out of the entire group. And then after that, I think probably Anton Khudobin would be kind of my second favorite, and Shesterkin, they would be kind of tied. I am just still a little concerned about that Rangers game, but he's looked so good that if he can keep it low scoring, then if it ends up being low scoring, Shesterkin's gonna be a great play. But Khudobin looks pretty locked solid. In that game, I think that's going to be a pretty low scoring game too. And the Predators aren't very good offensively in comparison. How much Pickard are you playing? Probably not a ton. In some lineups, if I build a lot of lineups, I might have a little bit. He's only 6,900. I do think that they might win that game. I just don't know how much I trust Calvin Pickard. I think a lot of what he did recently was more a product of the Blue Jackets being absolute ass. even a banged up Panthers team is better than the Blue Jackets. So overall, Edmonton won, number one line on the slate. Again, this is just based on 5v5 advantages. This isn't me saying these are the best teams. This is just they have the biggest advantage at 5v5 because they're that good. Montreal won second, but again, very, very noisy because they're just so talented. Or not talented, they're so just dominant. I don't understand them. I just wish they would start to suck a little bit so they'd stop popping so high, but whatever. It is what it is. Boston won, obviously outstanding. Dallas won, grades out extremely well. Tampa Bay won as well. Montreal 2, like I said, is my preferred option from the Montreal side of things. Chicago 1 looks great, but just hopefully Kirby Dach's up there. That'd be even more attractive. And then, yeah, Florida 2, if you don't believe in Calvin Pickard, then go for it. But yeah, it's a bit of a weird slate, but I think there's a lot of value to be had here. In terms of the blue line, yesterday, Provorov was my number one play on the blue line. He was absolutely outstanding. I mean, it's going to be difficult if you're playing the Panther or the Rangers not to play Adam Fox. He's just been on an absolute heater lately. Shea Weber, if you're playing Montreal 2, looks pretty solidly priced at 5,200. I do like that. If you're going on the Detroit side of things, I think Philip Roenick looks pretty solid at 4,500. He's been relatively consistent recently, plays an absolute shitload of minutes. Gustav Forsling, I mentioned at 3,800. I'm really interested to see how many minutes he plays tonight. He should get a huge boost. I do like Dante Fabro still. I don't like the Predators tonight, but Dante Fabro as a one-off looks fine. He's been playing massive minutes with Ryan Ellis out playing with Roman Josi. Production hasn't been great, but he's a guy that does get the puck on net, does block a fair amount of shots. At 3,500, he looks like an okay punt. Dmitry Orlov is starting to come around. He's still only 3,100. So I do like him a little bit as a one-off. Again, I'm not totally interested in that game as a whole. But the deep punts are looking a little rough. I think Jeremy Lauzon is relatively interesting. He's going to move up and play with Charlie McAvoy tonight. So I do like Lauzon a little bit. He should just see, he could see 23 minutes playing with Lauzon tonight. And then obviously, if you want to pay up for Matt Grzelcyk, he's a super attractive option with Boston 1 as well. But Grzelcyk's been playing like over 20 minutes a night with McAvoy. So Lauzon should see plenty of minutes tonight. So I think he's a pretty decent option if you can't afford those high-priced options. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, unless you guys have any final questions, that's going to be it for today's DFO DFS show. One final thing, I do have a $5 contest going for all of my listeners. We have 15 spots remaining. So I'll drop the link in the chat right now. Please fill it up because if we don't fill it, it doesn't run. And if it doesn't run, then I can't win. I am coming off of a victory last time, my first of the season. So hopefully get another one. But 24 of you will have a chance to win the first prize, which is a whopping $33.75, but pays out to fifth. So it's a pretty good contest to join if you're just kind of getting into DraftKings because you don't need to have the greatest lineup to win it. Some nights we drop some absolutely amazing lineups in there. There's been some really, really good ones that have just run away with the contest, but on most nights, you don't need the best lineup in the world to cash because it is just such a small contest. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. Please smash that like button if you're watching on YouTube on your way out and fill up that contest. I will be sending it to Twitter in a minute. So it's going to fill up fast. So I'll give you guys here a couple minutes to get in there if you can, because once I post it to Twitter, it usually fills up within a couple of minutes because that's what happens when you've got 45,000 followers. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So enjoy. We'll see you guys back here on Wednesday for another edition of the DFO DFS shows.